Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the College Football UK podcast. And I am your host, Fletch. And thank you for returning. If you watched us last week, I'm returning from the Joe Londigan episode, then welcome back. We are very, very glad to have you on. And with us this week, I am joined by all three of my usual stunning co-hosts in Nick Cosgrove, Sam Andrews, and Gary Thorpe. How are we doing, gentlemen?
All good?
Yeah, good.
It's been a while since I've had all three of you on, and I feel it feels really good to have the crew.
Full house, yeah, it does nice. It's been a few weeks since we managed to all get back together again.
It does, and as well as me and my three wonderful co-hosts, we will have some other special guest later on in the episode, but we'll explain that as we get to it. To start off with, as we usually do, we'll go through the news. And Nick, I'm going to throw this straight to you. What headlines have you got for us this week?
I have a bit going on. Two commitments. Cornerback Shamar Anu has committed to USC. He declared for the Trojans while out in Jacksonville this week. He joins his fellow high school player Julian Lewis, who's also declared at USC. Quarterback Troy Hunn, he's committed to Penn State. And he was also in attendance at the Manning Academy the other week, last week or the week before. They're two commitments that are on my radar. I do have some unfortunate news. Former University of South Florida tight end Tegan Martin, at the age of 20, has died following a single car crash near Hollywood Township in Minnesota. Apparently, he crashed his own BMW M5 and he died at the scene. So that is very unfortunate. And watch how you drive, people.
Don't buy an M5 when you're only 20 years old.
I know. I'll get to the college rankings in a minute, because I know you guys are all going to be excited about that.
Just
Northwestern are in the news, and they are being recommended to enhance their hazing prevention training. For those that don't know, hazing is, the older lads give the newer lads
tradition. Time-honoured
yes.
tradition.
The old lads take the new lads out for dinner, and then the old lads do a runner and leave the new lads to pay the bill.
That would be the gentlest form of hazing.
Correct. Former US Attorney General Loretta Lynch has led the investigators, and they've basically turned around to the school and said it's not good enough. They interviewed more than 120 people, both current and previous staff and athletes, student athletes, non-student athletes, and the decision was that Northwestern are not doing enough to ensure the safety of students in preventing hazing. So there you go.
You wonder whether or not her son, daughter went to Northwestern and suffered hazing, and that's why she was quite high.
Well, she's just the former US Attorney General that's been asked to lead the, so I don't know. Right, I know you guys can't wait for this. So right,
I want to jump in before anyone who's listening might suddenly think something. No, it's about what you just said. These are not the official college rankings.
No. I was going to get that.
Yeah, I was going to get that. Just so I could imagine if people are listening going, what, the rankings are out already?
So these rankings relate to some game that's coming out, some football game. I don't know. I'm not up on it, but I'm sure you can find a lad or two on this screen that'd be all over it. So the rankings are out, and in regards to the power rankings for the whole teams. Starting at the top, Georgia 95, Ohio State 93, Oregon 93, Alabama 92, Texas 92, Clemson 90, Notre Dame 90, LSU 90, Penn State 88, and Utah 88. You've got to go all the way down to number 11 to find Michigan, but they're 88 as well, as are Florida State, right behind them in 12 at 88. So, I don't know whether how far my list goes down. Oh, Iowa 25th, 87. So, on the defensive side of the ball, Ohio State 96, Georgia 94, Oregon 90, Alabama 90, Clemson 90, Notre Dame 90. Offensive side of the ball, Georgia 94, Oregon 94, Alabama 91, Texas 91, and Ohio State 89. And finally, according to EA Sports, they've done a ranking of the hardest place to play. Does anyone who's not seen this list want to guess the hardest place to play? If you've seen the list, then that's fine.
It's going to be Georgia or Ohio State, I would have thought.
No, I don't think so. I think they're going to probably pull out. Oh, somewhere either like Death Valley.
So your hardest place to play is Kyle Field, Texas A&M. That's the hardest place to play, followed by the Bryant-Denny Stadium, Alabama, Tiger Stadium, LSU, Ohio Stadium, Ohio State, Sanford Stadium, Georgia, Beaver Stadium, Penn State, and Camp Randall Stadium, Wisconsin. They are the top 7.
Okay. I wonder how they're working that
Your
one.
boys, Fletch, Michigan, are right down in 16.
Yeah, it's got to be just
my boys are even lower. The Notre Dame Stadium, 21.
Cool.
So it's not very hard. No need to bother about going there. So for you guys that are getting excited for the game, which is 3 weeks away, there you go. That's some information for you. And that is the end of the news.
So let me just triple check that. And by the way, if you are watching on YouTube and you weren't paying attention to the screen, Gary did put them up on the screen there for a second for us. Thank you very, very much, Gary. Apart from the hardest places to play rankings, but the offense, defense, and team rankings for college football 25 were on the screen for a second, so you can just rewind. Hey, there they go again. I'm actually quite interested to see how, throughout the trailers and the promos for it, all we got was Ohio State fans crying about how disrespected they were. And at least, I guess for their sake, they've been given quite high rankings and well rated in the game. So that might shut them up.
Which is
from
true,
the whining
which is
a little
fair
bit.
because their recruitment and their portal use this year has been absolutely outstanding. So I would expect them to be right up there.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to see Texas at 5th. I think that's brilliant.
Texas.
Getting that Arch Manning level high, hopefully.
Think he's starting for you this year?
No.
If you relate it back, Texas are considered to be one of the main teams that would be challenging Georgia for the SEC title. But you don't get that honor of being considered one of the favourites for the SEC without being a damn good team going up against Georgia.
We also did really well in the transfer portal as well, so that will have definitely helped.
Yeah. Well, was it
officially? I think Michigan and FSU are both suffering from this year's draft as well, obviously, because they both lost a lot of starters. So that's interesting that we both dropped out of the top 10.
Well, Michigan, particularly on the offensive side of the ball as well, because Michigan really, I don't think we're even in the top 25 in terms of offensive. No, not even in the top 25 of offensive power rankings. They're relatively high up on the defensive, but yeah, offensive
Yes,
side
I
of the
think
ball.
when you seventh defensive side, I think
Was it 11?
Yeah, not in the top 25
the
of
defensive
offense.
year seventh.
Oh no, yeah, defensive we were
Seventh.
7th.
And then offensive, you're not even in the
Doesn't
top
even exist,
25.
not
Yeah.
even on the top 25.
But overall,
Because
it
they
was
just
11th.
don't know who you've got, right? You don't know your offense right now, and it's
No, and I think we're still in that position right now. We're not even knowing who the quarterback's going to be, which isn't a great position to be in. But
I would quite like to understand how, looking at them, the offense, they have Texas as 91 overall for the offense. For the defense, they're 88 overall, but then the team overall is 92. How does that work? We must have
really good special
a
teams.
98
Really good
special team.
Really good punter, really good kicker, really good punt return and kick
can
return.
we please show some respect to punters and kickers here, please, and punt returners and kick and gunners? Show some respect, please.
Special teamers count too, right?
Special teams, special players.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Another thing. One of the things I actually thought was really cool this week, moving on, I guess, slightly from the power rankings, was just seeing all of the added little extras that they're putting in and how they kind of were finalising up some of the additional signs that were going to be like hand signs are going to be in there from. It's so detailed, this game, and I'm not actually trying to call you out here, Sam, in any way, shape, or form, but they did. EA did confirm that the horns down hand signal will not be in the game because it will only show no negative connotation. Hand gestures will be in there.
Yeah, so it was obvious that one was not going
in.
But yeah, I think it was quite interesting as long as
they have a at least one promo clip of Matthew McConaughey coming out at the start of a game, then I'll be happy. Which I know they won't, but it'd be fun if they did.
If you got the licensing for that, it would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Can I give your boy Gary a shout? Well, I know Sam, you definitely know him. I'm not sure about you, Nick, but can we give your boy Alex a shout? Alec, sorry, a shout. Sorry, Alec.
Alex.
Because we did put out this week. I mean, one of my thoughts has been over the last couple of weeks, as you might have heard on the last couple of weeks pods, is going to be Dynasty with the Akron Zips, but purely because the name's fun to say. And put a couple of shout outs for potential, like what our other dynasty is gonna be. And your boy came out with Virginia Tech for the walkout alone. And it'd be great to see, speaking of licensing, to see if they. I doubt it, but it'd be great if they could get the Metallica Enter Sandman going in the game. I think
it's such an iconic entrance. I think I can't see how they couldn't put it in. And same as South Carolina, the Shuttlecocks at South Carolina, they have the 20,001 theme to come and walking out to. All of that sort of stuff. I can't see. If we talked about it, that they went and modelled a horse to make sure they could get the FSU walkout with, the chief riding out. So I can't see how they wouldn't have Virginia Tech.
I think it depends on the cost of getting that song. Because I know that there's.
Well, is there a licensing cost to that song now? Because it is beyond a certain time.
No, it would still have it. There's the song that. This is going to test my knowledge. It's there's another song by someone like Metallica or something like that, which is they only release it for certain things. They only allow certain people to use it. It was in one of the Thor films, and I can't think what the name of the song is now.
It's like the Beastie Boys. The Beastie Boys refused to allow any of their music to be used for advertising, gaming, films. And that was their belief, and up until whichever brother passed away due to cancer, and then the other two sort of like just did their own thing. I think
get some money in, maybe. That was interesting. And on that, I wonder if if they don't have Virginia Tech, but do end up having Iowa's Back in Black, then that obviously kind of goes down to which if AC/DC sign up and say, yeah, you can use our song, but Metallica don't, that might just set the tone. Interestingly enough, wouldn't it? If battle of the bands, let alone battle of the college teams.
It was Led Zeppelin, immigrant song. Sorry, was the song I was thinking of.
As per sportingnews.com, on the 30th of May, Enter Sandman will not be in because just how expensive that licensing would be. Instead,
knew it would be
a
that
generic rock song that sounds similar will be played instead.
So somebody playing Enter Sandman badly then will be played. That's a pity, but again, as you say, licensing, it'd be interesting to see if AC/DC
basically embarrass myself in front of the whole world here, because obviously we all know what a sterling reputation I have among the world, and I'm so gonna question. So
I know what reputation you have. But,
oh no, we're not gonna go there, Gary.
It's a family show.
But my wife watches a lot of Dance Moms, and I somehow manage to every now and again she'll be watching it, and then all of a sudden I'll be kind of find myself watching along, and quite enjoying it. And I noticed that when they play certain bits of music, when they'll go do the dance competitions, what they do is they edit over the music in the episode, just purely because of that licensing thing. TLC or whoever it was who produced it had a list of songs that they could affordably license and play. The music that was being used by various dance groups and whatnot, they couldn't afford to lease. And it's just one of those things where, unfortunately, when you consider how many copies of this game are going to get sold around the world, given that, I believe, what was it, when NCAA College Football 14 was about, you couldn't get it in the UK. Now it's available worldwide. The sheer cost is going to be monumental to license it.
It's going to be millions, isn't it?
Yeah.
And now they've got to pay players this time round.
Go on.
The additional cost there.
Go on, Nick.
I have a list here. A feature in College Football 25 are Enter Sandman by Metallica and Jump Around by House of Pain. They are the two songs that are not in it. Kerncraft 400 Zombie Nation, that is in. Tsunami by D-Vubs and Burgess, that's in. Sandstorm by Darude, that's in. I don't listen to any of this.
Yeah,
I wonder if that's
Mobamba by
I'll be playing that
that's
one.
in. Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses, that makes it. An instrumental version of Neck, that's in. Wave on Wave by Pat Green, that's in. They are all in, but the two that didn't make it are House of Pain and Enter Sandman.
And not Back in Black, though.
That's interesting.
That's interesting.
I've got that same list up now, but just from USA Today. That's interesting. Well, there's a workaround for this. You play as Virginia Tech, then get your Apple Music up, get your Spotify up, and just as they're about to walk out, press play. Workaround. We provide solutions on this podcast, not problems. But other than that, I mean, it's... Nick, I know you're not really going to get to play the game, but do you agree with most of those rankings wherever you've gone?
I think he's disappeared.
I think he's disappeared. Well,
I'll take that question though, but I do think most of the rankings are probably quite accurate. I'm a bit surprised at some of them, but like I say, I think that this year there's so much uncertainty with how teams are going to play. I would have expected potentially Colorado to be slightly higher, just with the hype around them. I would have expected them to be slightly higher. I'm not saying that the team is necessarily any better, but would have expected them just because of the nature of Deion Sanders and all of that. But I think most of them are pretty accurate.
Yeah. One of the things as well with the stadium toughness is the loudness. You see the meter that they're gonna put up throughout the game, depending on how loud it gets and whatnot. So even things like that. They're gonna be, some of these are going to be fluctuating. Like, okay, such and such a stadium might be the third toughest to play in general, like when it's at its peak,
normal sort of.
But actually, and even down to things like one of the things that I found really, really interesting was they will have dynamic crowds depending on how well you're doing, which is really good.
And how experienced your players are as well, isn't it? I read.
Yeah. So
if you're not doing very well, QB's not very experienced.
Yeah.
The home crowd get behind it. It's just like wiggly lines of where your receivers are running, and you can't really. Yeah. So it sounds like
they have done a little bit of that in Madden. I don't know how much you play actual Madden,
but when introducing those things, didn't they?
Yeah. Because you've got the bar at the top of the screen, and it'll kind of fluctuate between home and away, and whoever's kind of performing better at that moment in time. And you can have things like wavy routes, and things like a receiver might not know what that route they're running, etc., etc. But Nick, before you accidentally or whatever happened there, I did say if you look at those rankings, what are your thoughts on the rankings, at least?
Yeah.
In terms of accuracy.
I think it's safe to say that the teams that you would expect to be near the top are near the top, and the teams that you would expect to be a little lower down are a little lower down. I'm quite surprised that the national champions are as low as they are, but
who were they again? Who were the national champions again? Can't remember.
Florida State, the unbeaten Florida State Seminoles. You mean this one?
I don't know. I don't know who it could be. If anyone wants to tell me and remind me who the national champions are at this moment in time, feel free to, just comment, tag us on Twitter, all that sort of stuff.
Harbour United, in it. Harbour United.
Blockbuster Videos, isn't it? Blockbuster Video.
Harbour United.
But just like, even if you know, just give me a sign or something to let me know. And that's okay. I'll leave it there.
Michigan State, was it? Was it Michigan State?
Predators, wasn't it?
What? Well, on that one, I'll go back to an old Alex Ferguson quote, which is one of my favourites. Never in my lifetime. Although I'm not going to go. Oh no, it's every time. So I'm going to be bit careful with how I actually use that. Actually, but as Gary tried to allude to there, we'll run on to this really quick. A tier maker was put out this week. Oh no, we heard you, and I'll just single that out.
Just a bit of fun. The tier maker.
So
it's nothing serious. Don't take it serious.
Not sure where it came from. Please, we didn't make this.
Well, I blame Chapman over at Hurdle the Line, to be honest with you, for this tier maker. But it was actually quite, despite the one banterous line that broke down a lot of the college football mascots by kind of what they're based on. And I think we all had a couple of issues with them. We'll leave the Michigan one out, but we all had a couple of little issues with these, including, Sam, your Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, well, to be honest, anything that involves a horned, creature from the cow family just seems to have been put in as natural predators, and I'm really unsure as to why, because they're not. They're just animals. So actually,
grass has feelings too. Grass has feelings too, Sam.
Well, then everything should be in the natural predators.
Everything, yeah.
But there were a couple of odd ones, or ones that I don't think actually made its way through. But that brings us nicely I believe, onto this week's trivia question, which, again, as we all know, is especially Nick's favourite part of the week. Now, there are a couple of answers I've got for this, but we're going to run with the answer I've got in front of me right now. What is the most common mascot in the NCAA Division 1?
Tiger.
Yeah, an animal.
I would request slight bit more specificity within that.
Specificity.
So, now,
it's a Friday evening, Gary.
Say the question again. Sorry, it's the most common mascot.
What is the most common mascot in NCAA Division 1? That includes FBS, FCS, etc.
Are we allowed just bird? Or does it have to be a specific type of bird?
It would have to be a specific, like the name you would actually find at the end of the name of the college team.
Is it a wild animal or is it a domestic animal?
I would say wild. Well, it's wild.
Mustang,
right, okay.
Bear.
Is it a cat?
No.
I think it's a bear.
Does it belong to the dog family?
It does not.
20 questions.
Oh, here we go. It's got to be bear, surely. It's got to be a bear. There's got to be a bear.
I'm trying to narrow it down.
I was going to say, is it like a...
Oh, it's a wildcat or something, isn't it? It's something wildcat. No,
a bear, a dog, a cat. It could be anything. Chuck me a list of dogs.
No,
Dachshunds, Dalmatians,
Bulldog.
Poodles. None of those, though. But I'll give you some dogs.
Eagle. Is it an eagle? Would it be an eagle? No, it wouldn't be an eagle, would
Correct. It is the Eagles. Approximately between FBS and FCS, Eagles are the most common, with approximately 15 colleges using Eagles as their mascot. Tigers.
Bird of America, isn't it? Let's be honest. Yeah.
Tigers are in joint second, as was mentioned quite early on by Gary. Now, when I said I got two answers, this is the official one given to me by the slightly more updated ChatGPT. Thank you, ChatGPT. But the other one that came through, there are a few sources that say this, but all of them are a few years old now. And, you know, with college realignments and some teams changing division and all that sort of stuff, this would probably has changed within that time. What is regularly considered like the joint second, and this is the most common, I believe, in the FBS rather than NCAA Division 1 overall. Could you guess what that is?
Tiger.
No. Joint second, though, with Tigers. Nope.
Lion.
Ram.
No. I believe it's a bit more on the nose than you'd think. Well, I say on the nose. It's a bit more like think a school that you would think of all the time within college football.
Wolves.
Nope.
Dogs, right? Huskies.
You're on the right track. You're on the right track. Bulldogs.
Yeah, it's got to be the Georgia Bulldogs, right?
It is. Bulldogs are the joint second with the Tigers, with around 12 schools across NCAA D1 and in the FBS and FCS. Eagles are officially, from the results I've got in front of me, the most common, but Bulldogs are. It's often thrown between. But the most recent article I can find that says Bulldogs are the most common was from before a lot of this major realignment stuff. So that I would throw credence into the fact that may have changed. Though, again, if we are wrong with that one, let me know.
Here's an interesting question, and it might be one that we can leave to the our budding fans to bring to us. when was the last time that a college changed their name/mascot?
Oh, that's a good one. Damn it.
Be interesting to. I don't know it. It's more just putting it out there, and maybe if someone does know it, they could maybe.
I wonder if it would be
share with
to
who
the
it
Commanders
is.
changing something.
That's what I'm thinking. I wonder if it is linked to that.
But
I
be
just thought,
something to do with the.
While we're on about mascots and that, I just wondered if there was anyone who would know when the last change was, who it was, and what it changed from.
So didn't the Cincinnati baseball team had to change, didn't they? Or was it Cleveland?
Do you
Cleveland
reckon?
Had to change their baseball team.
Do you reckon they have all the mascots go to Kentucky and run the horse race like we do, over here? We've got you get all the football mascots all turn up at Cheltenham and they all do a little race, don't they, down the straight? With a couple of jumps.
Have you seen? I believe this year's was at a Vikings game, but every year they do like a halftime show at one of the regular season games in the NFL. They'll do like a mascot game, mascots first kids. That is brilliant. I would suggest anyone go onto YouTube and watch them, because you'll watch like the Oregon Duck absolute like just stiff arm a 9-year-old and throw them into the dirt. It's quality. It's amazing to watch.
Didn't they once have they do? I'm pretty sure they do, like, again at one of the regular games. They do like a race, and it's utter chaos. You see like an assault course sort of thing. And just all these different mascots just get flying about. Yeah,
I've seen a couple of instances where mascots have eaten people.
Yes,
where they've got, where they've been in big suits and they've gone. I think the Titans did it once. The one and ate a cheerleader.
I think I've seen that this week.
But you see a couple of them. You see in basketball. There's basketball. Quite a few basketball mascots have big inflatable costumes, and they literally eat a person.
Run away.
I think I saw that cheerleader one this week. Funnily enough.
Right.
But while everyone,
it's from years ago.
While the UK, there's the argument over whether we get a franchise or whether we get a Super Bowl or anything like that. That's the game that we need, by the way, a mascot. Game.
That's what they need to bring. That's what they need to bring to the NCAA game in Ireland. They need to bring the mascot race to Week 0 College Football Ireland game. That would
absolutely.
That would get the biggest cheer. Everyone wouldn't leave for half time like normally, but they'd all just stay and watch that.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, gents, it has been fantastic to sit with you for a short time on this Friday evening. But, as mentioned, we do have a special guest. However, that special guest was recorded a few days ago. We have the fantastic and amazing Ben Isaacs, who's a prominent face within the American football community across the United Kingdom, who I'm very aware that if you are based in the UK and are involved, like watching or listening to this podcast, you will know who he is. I will put money on you know who he is. So, without further ado, I think I'm just gonna go straight into that episode. And thank you, gents, for joining me this evening. And for now, go listen to me and Gary talk to Ben. Hey, so a couple of weeks ago, I made a libelous statement on here that a certain member of the UK community of American football was sharing dodgy links to college football games, and rather than sue me for the libelous statement, he's come on the podcast to hash it out with me one-to-one with Gary as a mediator. Ben, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. My solicitor is right here with me. We're going to get it all sorted today, and hopefully no one's going to end up in court, even though someone here is dressed for it.
Yeah. So it looks like I've just got back.
I said the plan wasn't for Gary to be a mediator, but he turned up looking like one, so...
I've taken the Asleep at Work network just a little bit too far today.
He looks very professional.
Yes.
Looks can be deceiving, Ben, trust me.
Yeah. So... You've been brought up a couple of times on this podcast, Ben, and we're very excited to have you. You are very much one of the staple faces across the community of all of American football in the UK. Can you just give us a little start on, I guess, as brief as you can, how you got into football and what makes you so passionate about college football, particularly in the UK?
So when I was a kid in the 80s, I can remember sticking on Channel 4 American football because it looked like a kind of cool thing that I should like. I was like 6 years old. And I put it on. I had no idea what was happening, obviously. The Bears were playing. I'm going to assume the Bears won. I think this was the 1984 season. The Bears won, and I thought, okay, well, that's my team. And I basically just forgot then about American football for months and months and months until it was the Super Bowl. And I was always staying up stupidly late, and I could get away with murder. So here I am. I would have been still 6 years old, and I was up for the Super Bowl, which admittedly was a little bit earlier in those days. But It was Super Bowl 19. It was sunny California, and I saw the start of it. Again, I had no idea what was going on. You could have asked me the next day what two teams were playing, and I wouldn't have known. I've just loved the sport ever since. Finally started to understand it as the years went on, thanks to lots of magazines and just watching everything I could. With college football, started getting into that when NASN was around. If anyone remembers NASN, North American Sports Network, in the early to mid 2000s. Finally a chance to kind of watch the sport on a regular basis. Always intrigued because of the draft. And just the more I would watch of it, the more interesting I found it because of how different it was to the NFL. And I'd started to feel that around that time, it seemed like most NFL teams were playing very similar offenses. Teams would be almost, the way they would play was almost interchangeable to a certain extent. It was a little bit monotonous. And I started to get more into college football because you had that variety. You had such different offensive schemes that have started to bleed into the NFL. And that variety just revitalized my love of the sport. And it's when I speak to NFL fans in the UK, so many of them, they live and die by their NFL teams, which I get. You know, their Sundays revolve around watching their team. They maybe will watch like whatever the main game is on Sky, and then their team is playing, and then they'll watch that. Their focus is their team. And I've tried to say to people that maybe college football you can use in a more relaxing way. If you want, don't even pick a team. Just consider Saturdays to be like a massive buffet of games and just dip in and out, or choose a team in every conference. So you've always got things going on. You've always got a rooting interest. There's just so much of it. Compared with the NFL, there's so much of it, and there's such a variety. Sorry that wasn't brief. I don't do brief very well.
That's absolutely fine. In fact, that was better than brief. I would much rather that answer than a brief one. That's amazing. I don't know if you were watching myself and Gary there, Ben, but as you mentioned NASN, a generational gap appeared on screen.
Just
as
a little
Gary
bit.
kind of
I'm
went,
nodding along, and you're looking there going completely
Nope.
unknown what that was.
No.
Yeah,
No. But that was fun to watch occur as you were speaking there. That's amazing, though. So, did you end up pledging allegiance to your own college team then, in the end? Or have you treated it such as the buffet is?
Well, the thing is I consider myself a Florida State fan. That's why it was such a thrill getting to go over there in November to do some work ahead of the game in Dublin this summer. Yeah. But because I started being interested in Florida State through First Down in the early 90s. At that point, that was really my only access to college football, reading game reports in First Down. And Florida State just seemed like a really exciting team. Just going on the words. It could, like, if it was a couple of years earlier, maybe it would have been Miami that I was interested in, but it was Florida State at that point. But unlike the NFL, I certainly don't live and die by Florida State. That's my favorite team. It's not an obsession. And there are certain teams in certain conferences that I've got a soft spot for, which when I go into NFL fan mode, there's one team I like and there's 31 teams I don't like. And I think a lot of NFL fans are like, obviously they hate certain teams more than others, and maybe they've got a soft spot for other teams. When I'm in fan mode, I don't. And luckily, I get to do both sides. I get to be a fan sometimes, and I get to be like a media professional, and then I can be completely unbiased. But it's easier for me to be unbiased with college football because I didn't grow up desperately watching Florida State like I did desperately grow up watching the Bears. So I can still treat it like that buffet.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's important, isn't it? Because as UK fans, we are removed from that fanaticism that you can see from the college. If you watch college football, there is like almost, as you say, they live and die by their college team. But because we're so, well, I wouldn't say removed from it. Well, I suppose we are removed from it to such a distance that we don't get that sort of buy-in. But because it's so, there's so much of it, and it's so, constantly, as you say, on a Saturday, it's just a moving feast of so many games to watch. You can just dip in and not feel like your Saturdays and your weekends are completely ruined if you have the game bad at 12 o'clock. Then that's it. It's
Absolutely.
gone.
Absolutely.
The best thing is you've got the next one at 3 p.m.
Yeah, and that's it. That's why I say, if you're determined to have a rooting interest, and I, a few years back, I got to go behind the scenes at College Game Day, and I was interviewing all the guys on that show, and a few of them said, like, if UK fans want to get into it, pick a team, and I thought afterwards, I don't know if that's the best way to enjoy it. Like, they've all got their NFL team that can ruin their weekend. Do you want to double your chances of having your weekend ruined? You could just take it as this, this incredible showcase of different sort of sports. Like, the stadiums look so different. The fans are so different. It isn't like that kind of homogenous blob that the NFL can become. Like, the stadiums are getting more and more similar. They have a lot less personality than they used to. There's certain stadiums that will have distinctive bits in them. Like kind of like the brickwork of Ford Field and things like this. That it's like, okay, you're there. But with a lot of the others, it's like, this
like a cookie
is
cutter, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's
and those
NFL stadium.
Yeah,
Is it
and those
Allegiant?
stadiums are amazing. But there's just it's not as much personality. But like, I've spoken to NFL fans about college football who didn't have an interest in college football, but were on holiday somewhere and had the chance to go to a game, and they were like, Jesus Christ, why did no one tell me what these games were like? Like, they've kind of like they've gone along to like a Texas game, or they've gone along to a University of Florida game, or whatever, and it's like, oh, so this is what college football's like. This isn't what I was expecting. And it's, the atmosphere at those games is intoxicating. And you can put on a game on a Saturday and you feel that atmosphere so much more. NFL games don't really have much of an atmosphere, let's be honest. And I love the NFL, and I will never not love the NFL. But NFL games do not really have that much of an atmosphere. If you've been to a college game, you're like, oh, okay, NFL teams, that's cute. Yeah, I see what you're doing. It's just not the same, not even close. And that's part of it. And the broadcasts are usually so good that you do get a feeling of that atmosphere.
And I think that's true. You feel, and from a UK perspective, you get. I don't want to bring up like the tribalism of football in this country, but the college rivalries and some of the games in the college sort of networks are like that. They are sort of bitter. There are history and stuff like that. We talked about that on the show before, Fletch, about those long running histories, Texas and Oklahoma and those sorts of things. You feel that, and you can get that through the broadcast, as you say, and they are very good at making sure that you feel part of the crowd and part of all the build up and the noise and the razzmatazz.
Well, I guess just from my perspective, when you look at the NFL, you've got 50 states and 32 teams. And those 32 teams, that, let's face it, I watched a lot of I don't know if either of you two did, but I watched quite a bit of the UFL this year. And tried to get as much into the UFL. Look, there isn't much that can come close to the NFL in terms of the quality of the play. So realistically, we do have 32 teams around the world that are the ones that we can watch for the pinnacle of the game. And I guess that dilutes it a little bit. And I completely agree. But watching these college games, particularly from that, but you've also, I think for me, the thing is, I guess, when you look at our football, unlike the NFL, a team can move across to a different side of the country Okay, not necessarily tomorrow, but they can move across to the other side of the country tomorrow, and that's just part of the sport. That can happen, whereas you can't uproot a whole college and an academic program and multiple athletic programs tomorrow. You just can't do that. So these institutions are part of communities and have been for over 100 years. And as we've mentioned before, it's not just that, say, I went to Michigan, my dad went to Michigan, my mum went to Michigan, my grandparents went to Michigan. These colleges have such a history within families that communal tie is well and truly there in comparison to the NFL for that, that connection that you get to the team.
Yeah, and you say that about like kind of going through the generations of and all going to the same university. In this country, you only get that in relation to Oxford and Cambridge, and there it's about status and what that means. So if you take that out of the equation, and actually about loyalty and kind of what it means to be part of that university, that simply doesn't exist in this country. Mm-hmm. In part, that's down to the sport, but not entirely down to the sport. You say about like being part of those communities. I'd go further. I would say in some ways they're the reason that there is a community there.
Yeah.
Like if you go to Ann Arbor, Michigan, can you even imagine the place without the University of Michigan? It's like it's the biggest employer there. It's the whole thing, you know? And so many of these places are, because they're smaller towns or smaller cities, like, so Ohio State is in Columbus, Ohio, which by college standards, considering it's a college town, is actually quite a big place, like 1 million people there, and there is a pro NHL team there. You go to other cities that, like, you go to South Bend, there's no professional sport. Now, South Bend is very, very close to Chicago, but it's very much its own place. You know, it's across the border in Indiana. It's, like I say, it's like spitting distance to Chicago, really. But you would never feel like you're just part of the Chicago metro area. You are in South Bend, Indiana, and it's Notre Dame everything, 24 hours a day. And very few pro cities can pull that off with their college teams. So the University of Washington's in Seattle, and it's very, very, it's a big deal in Seattle. But Seattle's still a pro sports town. You know, it is not like it is not like Columbus, and it is not like Ann Arbor or dozens and dozens of other places where there are big schools. And it's different. Like, you know, USC and UCLA, they aren't going to sell out unless they are doing really, really well. And Miami is the same as well, because they're college towns, but they're not college towns. They're pro towns and entertainment towns first.
Yeah.
But you go to Norman, Oklahoma, or you go to Austin, Texas, and Austin's not a small place, but my God, everything revolves around the University of Texas. And then the places like even smaller than those, where those places would not exist. Like I was in Tallahassee in November. You cannot imagine the place without Florida State University. It is it. And you go to these places and you are so engrossed in everything going on and how it relates to college football culture. It is not like, and there's going to be lots of people listening to this who've gone to see their favorite NFL team. So they'll have gone to Kansas City. They've had a pilgrimage to Kansas City and to see the Chiefs. And the Chiefs are as high as they've ever been right now. Kansas City loves its Chiefs. It is not a city with lots of other competing sports. It is still a fraction of what you'd get if you went to a college town and you'd see that. And if you're going somewhere big, like if you go to Detroit and you see the Lions, and the Lions are doing well, people love the Lions in Detroit, but they also love the Tigers,
they do, yeah.
And they also love the Red Wings, and they also love the Pistons. They also love the Michigan Wolverines. Yeah. So you've got all this stuff going on in these big, big metropolitan cities that's great. They're great places to go to. They're amazing places. You go to those smaller towns, you see the real America, you see how a college football community is, and if you do that, you'll never watch an NFL game in the same way again. That's the downside of going to a college football game.
And I think that's it. That's top the episode. That I don't think we can beat what you've just said there.
Well, wrap it up. Do you think on that, Ben? I know you talked about it there briefly about doing the work over in Tallahassee in preparation of this year's College Football Ireland game. Do you hope that there's a chance to bring some of that over to Dublin so for the UK and European guys get a chance, a little taste of that, especially this year, because I believe we might be getting lucky this year, whether if the rumours are true that maybe ESPN Game Day is coming over for that.
ESPN Game Day is definitely, they're coming over.
So
I can tell you that now.
Help to
they're
really
coming over.
Give that sort of
impetus. They'll take over a part of Dublin, and it'll be amazing. That'll be a spectacular sight. That'll be worth seeing by itself. The schools involved in these games do such a good job, and I think it's getting better each year, of trying to bring that atmosphere over. So I know that Florida State have sold a hell of a lot of tickets of people coming over to Dublin. Georgia Tech, obviously that's a smaller fan base than Florida State, so not as many. But they're trying to get as many fans over, and they have the bands, and they have all this, and they are doing their absolute level best to make it feel as much like a college football game as possible. Like, when you go to an NFL game at Wembley, you know you're going to an NFL game at Wembley or at Tottenham. It's its own thing. Anyone who's been to a game in America knows that it doesn't feel anything like going to those games. But it's really hard bringing that atmosphere over. And I think Nebraska Northwestern, the stuff outside the stadium, the stuff in the build-up to that game was really good. It stepped up a gear the following year because of Notre Dame, and Notre Dame were doing the whole thing. They were running the show. They ran the stadium. It was their event, like the Jags run their games at Wembley.
They really pushed it for the fighting Irish aspect.
Yeah.
They really sold that.
And again, they're trying to kind of take it to that next level now with Florida State and Georgia Tech in terms of what atmosphere they can bring into the stadium and everything around it. And then next year, it's Kansas State versus Iowa State, Farmageddon, perhaps the best nickname of any college rivalry game, Farmageddon. And that's, those aren't two schools that are necessarily going to be like eye-popping for a lot of college football fans who are like new to the sport. But that's actually a big rivalry game, and the idea that that's coming on the road and that's going to be there for us is pretty exciting. I love what's going on in Dublin, and I'm a little bit conflicted by the whole Steelers and Ireland thing. From what I've heard, it's just a matter of time before it's confirmed that the Steelers will play a game in Dublin. My fear is that in the same way,
the Jags Wembley,
like that's it. That's my worry, that if it's decided every couple of years we're going to see the Steelers at Croke Park or whatever, because I think it'd be Croke Park, not the Aviva. My worry is, in the same way I'm talking about college towns and pro towns, Dublin has cornered the market on college football. There's no point somewhere in the UK. I've had people say, "Oh, what about if they came to Manchester or they came to Birmingham, avoiding London, let London do the NFL." It's just not going to be the same. Like, this is Ireland's thing. The Irish government pays for this to happen. It's a great tourist initiative. If the NFL is also in Dublin, does that push college football to the side a little bit? Does it make it seem like, oh, this isn't as good as the NFL? So I worry a little bit about potential perception and people misunderstanding what the kind of proposition is for college football games in Ireland, because it was going to offer you something that you're not going to get from a Steelers game in Ireland, that you don't get from a Jags game at Wembley, and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
I've got one question, and I think to kind of, I guess, start cracking on with some of the other bits that we've got on the itinerary. I think my question to you on this is: would Dublin benefit, or would college football benefit from getting there first? In the sense that with the atmosphere and with what it's brought to the city of Dublin, bringing an NFL game over, do you think it could almost be in reverse and say, have have a lot of the NFL fans or the locals come up and say, well, actually, this doesn't bring the fanfare. This doesn't bring. We prefer the marching bands and we prefer the hype and all that sort of stuff. The Steelers coming over doesn't quite feel the same.
I think the general hype machine that the NFL brings and the global attention that brings can starve it of oxygen a little bit. And I'm not saying it would be the end of the college football game in Dublin. I don't think it would be. I think there's a great audience for it. And the people who are running College Football Ireland are absolutely fantastic. I just don't like the idea of it pushing it to the side, which there is this risk just because the NFL is so big.
Such a beast, isn't it, when it moves?
Yeah, it's absolute behemoth. And like, I think that college football game in Ireland is going to last a very long time and it's always going to be popular. But my dream is for it to be, okay, well, what if it's not just once a season? What if there's a bowl game? Or what if there's a game mid-season? And I think there's only so much demand in, although they're looking to attract people from the UK and through Europe, which they do, Ireland and Dublin are only so big to be able to kind of accommodate that level of demand, because there's still lots of people in Ireland who they're looking to sell tickets to. And they own college football. And there's something to be said for, owning something where people are super passionate, but you have it's a smaller thing than to have something big that you just share like a little tiny piece of.
Yeah.
Before we go into the serious business, can I address the actual, to me, in a way, serious business of the whole streaming links? I mean this genuinely, right?
Well, I think.
Go on.
Sorry, just my segue into the serious business was accessing the UK. You spoke
okay, you're a pro.
NASN.
You're a pro. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I'm not my first rodeo. Yeah, sorry. NASN. Your access in the 90s was limited, and one of the big things you were saying as you were talking, telling about how you got into college football was the limited access. It's amazing to see that college football is coming over. We spoke a few weeks ago on the podcast about how Sky Sports do show college games every week. That's amazing. But what are some of the other ways and some of the ways in which we can, and how do you support the the American football community in the UK to access college football via links?
So, I would say for about the first half of the season, I was putting as many YouTube links out there as possible for people to access these games illegally. And I made no bones about that. And I'm someone who's, done work with the NFL and all this other stuff, right? So in a way, I shouldn't be someone sharing out these links, right?
Mm-hmm.
For many years, we had ESPN Player, which was a great streaming platform. And every conference and game that ESPN had the rights to, which was probably about 70% of the games, you could stream them, you could watch them on demand, you could download them. It was brilliant. It was, although you didn't have games that were broadcast by Fox, and there was a big chunk of really important games that were on Fox that you couldn't see through ESPN Player, at least we had this, right?
Yeah.
We also had BT Sport showing the SEC game of the week, which was a nice addition. So that kind of supplemented it a little bit. I then got told, and I've worked on podcasts where ESPN Player were kind of partners and sponsored us, and I'll tell you now, I had ESPN Player for free, would have happily paid for it, and then ESPN Player closed, and I was told this, and I was pretty devastated because I was asking them, so who's got the rights? And I was told, no one in the UK has the rights to these games anymore. And the people I knew at ESPN UK were pretty devastated about that because they loved college football and they loved people being able to access it. And it bothered me that people would not be able to see it. So I thought, you know what? I know that pretty much anything you want to watch, you can watch it illegally, and YouTube would be full of these streams. So I thought, I'm going to put them out there because if the UK rights holders come to me and say, please don't do that, you're taking money out of our pockets, I'd say, okay, I'm going to stop. But there were no UK rights holders. The first time I put these links out, someone from ESPN just sent me a message saying, mate. And I said, look, if you can do a deal with someone, then I won't put the links out. But there's no way to watch these legally. It's either you watch it illegally or you don't watch it at all. I'd rather they watched it illegally. I'm not going to... I said, if there's... Because at one point, ESPN were talking to me about... And they told me off the record, I'm going to say it now because it's long gone, that they were trying to do it so that you could stream for free on the ESPN UK homepage, like a game of the week. And it didn't come to anything, but they were trying to do deals with other broadcasters with this content. And I imagine not a lot of money was involved because I don't think anyone's going to break the bank for it, but they wanted it to be out there. So I was just putting these links out over and over and over again until finally Sky did a deal. They basically sub-licensed all the ESPN games. We still wouldn't get... We did have a fraction of what we had on ESPN Player because, that was pretty much everything that ESPN had access to. Once, and I then chatted with Sky Sports and I chatted with ESPN. I said, look, there's now a way to watch games legally. I'm not going to put the links out there in the same way I'm not going to put them out for NFL games. Like if there are broadcasters out there who are looking to support the game, I would rather push people towards those. Am I disappointed we don't have ESPN Player? Yeah, I'm absolutely gutted because that was the full buffet, right? That was a real smorgasbord. I'm hoping, as far as I'm aware, I've not had it confirmed to me, Sky Sports will have ESPN games next season, including the playoff games. So that's great, but there's still loads of games we don't get because there's only so many games they can show.
Yeah.
And there are games on Fox that we won't get. So we never get Michigan, Ohio State.
No.
And I don't really see how someone it's not in Sky's interest to be like, okay, well, we're going to do a deal. We're going to pay for the Fox games because they're only going to show one game. So if they show the Fox game, that's an ESPN game they've paid for that they're not showing. So I don't see us getting those games. I would love it if there was some college football streaming platform in the UK, but there's not a market for that. There's not a market for a college football of NFL Game Pass. We might subscribe, but how many other people?
How many other?
And pulling those rights together. If you had a platform that had all the college football rights, I don't know how you would do that deal. With the NFL, you do a deal with the NFL. The NFL owns its own global rights. In college football, the conferences sell their global rights to a broadcaster. So ESPN holds the global rights for the ACC, now the SEC, and so on and so forth. And thankfully, ESPN were desperate to do a deal, but I can't imagine that someone is sat around Fox Sports HQ in America thinking,
all the others going,
can I find a UK broadcaster to take these games? They don't care. So my message is that, support what Sky Sports is doing.
Yeah.
You can watch college football there. I won't be putting the links out while there's a broadcast partner. But there's loads of games that you don't get to see, and that's unfortunate.
A thing that I was saying, especially around the UFL, again, when it came out, was, and we mentioned again, I think when talking about the rights and being able to watch it in the UK, is they need to know that we're here, and the numbers need to grow, because again, if 20 of us who are very passionate is still only 20 people in comparison. But I think I've lost my point there.
I think the point, where you're going there, Fletch, is if Sky is showing it, watch it, because then the numbers show that there is a market for it. And the more people who watch Sky Sports and the more people who see the interest, then the potential of the other networks and the other people may be realizing that there is a viable market is there. But if we don't show up and watch the Sky games, that's going to be kind of like us just banging a drum and shouting at the wind a little.
Yeah. Oh, the point I was gonna get onto as well though was, I remember a couple of years ago watching it on BT Sports, and it felt to me that every time I seemed to have the time to tune into a game on TV where my wife or my daughter would actually let me do it, I was done by midway through the second quarter. Did I disappear then?
Still there, kind of.
There we go. Yeah, when my wife or daughter would actually let me watch Saturday football, it felt like I was done by the game was done by the mid-second quarter, because you'd get, say, a Michigan versus a Boise State, and it wasn't close. The game was just not close. And if you are into the NFL and you're used to watching, the Bills versus the Chiefs, and you go to watching a game that's 31-0 by midway through the second quarter, how do you feel about that disparity? Is that going to... I know we don't necessarily have full control over the quality of the games we get every week and what ones we can show that are the most competitive, but how do we as a group of fans, I guess, support the community to understand that, kind of get through that disparity in games and the shared disparity between two teams that may play each other?
Yeah, I mean, there are more blowouts in college football than in the NFL. Like, the difference between the haves and the have-nots is much greater. It is not a level playing field. It is much more like European football. There are some teams are Man City and some teams are very much not Man City. And a team like Michigan is like a Man City, and some other teams are going to be, say, like a Burnley. And they don't have the resources, and maybe there can be an upset occasionally, but generally they're going to try and punch above their weight. And you do get those games. And I would say that if you're new to college football and you're watching games on Sky and one is looking a bit like a blowout, then for me, what I'm watching anyway is I'm looking at, okay, who's draft eligible? Like, who am I seeing here that I'm going to see at the next level? What can I see in them here that makes me think on Sundays they're going to be good? And that's kind of the game within the game when you're watching college football. You're not just watching it as just a piece of entertainment. Like, I hope this is a good game. You'll be looking for key players, because those key players are the ones that, when their name is called by Roger Goodell, it's pretty good if you've got a group of mates who all watch the NFL and you think, I saw him play like 4 times for Texas A&M last season. Here are the things that I love about him. And you're there in the WhatsApp group saying, look, like, if let's say you're all fans of like a particular NFL team and you've drafted this guy, like, you should see the way he sheds these blocks. Look at the highlights of his game against Missouri, where they blew them out and he was unblockable. You look great then. in your group of mates, you seem like you are the smart guy. You're the one that then everyone is going to be like, oh yeah, he knows, and that's kind of paying attention for even if the game's a blowout. I mean, in those days of ESPN Player, if a game wasn't so competitive, I mean, I'd often have like 3 or 4 screens set up. If a game wasn't competitive, I'd often kind of jump around and watch other things. But there's something to be said for, here's the game, and I'm going to watch this, and I'm going to be invested in it. And if it's a blowout, then here are the things I'm watching for. And it can be hard in today's day and age. Like, all of us seem to have like shorter attention spans, and it's like the next thing, the next thing.
Yep.
Yeah, but sometimes that's not it, and that's not how you spot the draft prospects either. So different ways of watching, I guess.
Lovely. I agree, by the way. It's one of the best things ever is being able to, after watching a bit last year, watching even more last year than I did the year before, was being able to do that. But also going to my group of friends who are Detroit Lions fans and going, as they're kind of talking about a prospect, and feeling like I don't have to just sit down and shut up and listen. I can actually step in on a conversation. And I don't want. None of us want to be a novelty value in these conversations, but the amount of times it was, oh my god, the British guy knows what he's talking about. That's amazing. But I
mean,
yeah, that's a big plus.
Dealing with that. That's nice, all in all. But actually, what I want to be is in next year, around next year when everyone's talking about college prospects. I don't want that to be the case. I want that to be a case of, oh, Fletcher's in the chat, bring him up. Sound, that's great. Whereas, again, I'm acceptable of being a novelty once or twice, but I think for the good of the game, for British people being taken seriously as passionate fans of the sport, it's great to be. I'd love to be able to do that and kind of fly that flag and showcase.
Yeah, I mean, when you speak to American NFL fans and they realize you've got a good knowledge of college football, then they're particularly impressed because they'll feel like that's so much harder. That's so much harder to do. So yeah, if you want to impress Americans, that's a great starting point.
Free bear.
Get into college football. Yeah.
We've got to get it for the guy who knows who won the Potato Bowl in 2012. He needs a free bear. That's fair. That's got to be done. Lovely. So I guess we're kind of aware with now where we're at, so how we can watch college football in 2024, ready for week 0. I'm very much looking forward to the game in Dublin. I don't know about you guys. I don't know if Florida State are playing, so I guess you're kind of excited for it.
Kind of was first in the queue.
A little bit.
Tickets, yeah.
Yeah. But with week 0 being very, very well, it's getting ever closer. Luckily, we have the College Football 25 game as well to kind of get us through to that bit off, at least for me anyway, which I officially pre-ordered this week, and I'm now doubly excited about.
Only pre-ordered it this week.
Yes.
Not on release day.
And I'm very much looking for... I've considered myself, by the way, Akron Zips are going to be the next great dynasty of college football. I cannot wait. Why I chose a team from Ohio, given all my allegiances in American sports, I don't know. But I like the name Akron Zips. Anyway.
Think how satisfying it'll be, though, when you schedule a game against Ohio State as the Akron Zips and you beat them.
Yeah.
You go into Columbus, you beat them.
I want to throw the game in the national championship against Michigan. My sporting integrity will not actually be questioned. I'm not having that. But looking forward to the 2024 season, Ben, I just want to get I think Gary and I wanted to get your opinion, and so did Nick as well, even though he's not with us today. Wanted to get your opinion, hear your opinions on just some of the things we could be looking out for in 2024, and particularly for those who are newer to the sport and newer to college football. I guess having things that we can look for, teams that we can look out for, and maybe even a couple of players that you feel that are important to, that we could be seeing Roger Goodell mentioning in April in Green Bay. First off, we've spoke a bit about the transfer portal on this podcast. Are there any teams that you're looking at after this transfer portal and you're impressed with what they've done so far?
Always impressed by Florida State in the transfer market. I don't think anyone has done better than Mike Norvell since the portal opened. The way identifying those players who are going to be the right fit is a real skill, and he's got a knack for that. And I don't even know what Florida State are going to look like when they take the field in Dublin, because there's been so much turnover and there's so many new players coming in, but really good prospects. The other team that's really impressed me in the portal is Ohio State. They've attracted so many blue chip players. It clearly bothered them how they have been owned in that division the last couple of seasons, and how much it must have stung to see Michigan win the national championship. And I'm not saying they wouldn't have been going all out in the portal, but they just seem like they must be so motivated. Like, they look much stronger than Michigan right now. If those portal players, if they pan out, then my God, so Caleb Downs, who they got from Alabama. Like, he's super young. He's perhaps the best safety in college football. Like all-American level last season. Now, he's left Alabama, right? So this isn't one of those where it's someone who's
uplifted to a bigger
stepping
team.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you're at Alabama, and when Nick Saban left, he wanted to leave. And Nick Saban, not only is, in my opinion, the greatest college coach of all time, he's a defensive back guru. So I imagine that Caleb Downs looked at him in a certain way, and then without him just thought, I don't know about this anymore. It's like the vibe's different. And went into the portal, and I think Ohio State were rubbing their hands together. Like there were plenty of teams that would have taken him. But like Julian Sayin, Quinshon Judkins, the sort of caliber of players that Ohio State have taken from the transfer portal is absolutely just unreal, off the charts. I'll mention one other transfer portal player because I think he's a good draft prospect, and that's Evan Stewart at Oregon. He was at Texas A&M. Texas A&M, like, their recruitment out of high school for a few years was the best in the country. They couldn't turn that into significant wins, and now a lot of those players are leaving. He's an interesting case, Evan Stewart, because in the same way that we've seen college players opt out of draft games ahead of the draft, thinking like, I don't want to do a big bowl game, or I don't want to do an all-star game for the draft. I'm just going to opt out. I'm so focused on the draft, forget the bowl games. He played the first few games of his senior season in high school and then said, yeah, I'm stopping now.
Yeah,
I'm not running the risk of getting injured. Teams have seen enough to recruit me to the next level. Like, the idea that, like, he's a kid and he's like, yeah, I've done enough here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's been great, and he'll be great at Oregon. Like, one of the big stories of this season is the conference realignment.
Yeah.
And getting Oklahoma and Texas into the SEC, getting 4 teams from the West into the Big Ten. Not only has that strengthened the SEC and the Big Ten, it reinvigorates rivalries we've not seen for a long time, Texas versus Texas A&M. And you've got these teams from the Pac-12, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. And you look at them with these teams from the Midwest and the East, and to the untrained eye, that seems ridiculous. And in some ways, it is ridiculous. But the greatest bowl game in college football is the Rose Bowl, which is the Pac-12 against the Big Ten. And these bowl games are basically set up to encourage tourism. So the idea of people from like cold weather places in the Midwest taking a trip to Pasadena New Year's Day while it's freezing cold in, say, Ann Arbor, going to the Rose Bowl to watch Michigan versus USC, it was a big tourist thing. So these teams, the top teams in the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, have been playing each other for generations. So there is a rivalry with, Michigan against all of those teams, and Ohio State against all of those teams. And it's going to be fascinating to see that on a more regular basis, being able to be like, okay, well, who's playing this week? Oh yeah, it's Oregon against Michigan, and it's Ohio State versus UCLA, and it's Penn State versus Washington. It's like, I don't like necessarily the breakup of the conferences.
They have a bowl feel to them almost every week now, isn't there? There's that sort of level of rivalry, level of teams now. And maybe it'll get away from that blowout sort of thing that we just mentioned. Maybe there'll be a lot more competitive games, which is only good for the sport.
Yeah. You've got all these new teams joining the ACC, the likes of SMU. That the move to the ACC feels a lot less natural than the others. The Big 12 has taken in various teams, like a lot of teams that were kind of left stranded when the Pac-12 collapsed. But teams like Utah, who are really, really good and should win the Big 12 this season and get themselves in the playoff. And of course, the playoffs expanded. And I'm telling you all things you already know, but I'm just excited, guys. I'm just excited. And the more I think about the conferences, I think about the playoffs, and I think about that playoff field, and I think of the likes of Utah with a point to prove, and Florida State with a point to prove, and getting into the playoff, and anything can happen.
Yeah.
Look into the playoffs. The expanded playoffs to 12 teams. I'm loving how you keep setting me up to segue us in. It's absolutely brilliant. To set up the 12-team playoffs means that, as we've spoken about on the podcast before, we kind of group the conferences in the FBS into two categories. We've got the Group of Five and what was, up until very recently, the Power Five. So the Group of Five that consists of the American Athletic Conference, Conference USA, the Mid-American Conference, the Mountain West, and the Sun Belt Conference. The winners of those 5 conferences will all get automatic entrance into the playoffs, which is brilliant for those teams because they get to go, and at some point they may get their backsides kicked at some point, but they get to go and hang about with the big boys in the postseason. Now it's been expanded to 12 teams. And what I want to ask you here is we'll kind of go through those relatively quickly, and who do you think will be representing each of those conferences in the expanded 12-team playoffs? And if we'd like to start with the American Athletic Conference.
Well, I should just say the playoff model as it is, the 5 highest ranking conference champions will get in.
Yeah.
So it's probably a safe bet that the biggest 4 of those, the conferences left from the Power 5, those 4 should make it, but it means that at least one of the Group of 5 champions will get in, and depending on other rankings, we can have multiple ones. So, one of these teams is getting in. Okay, right. Which one did you start with? Sorry.
Okay,
so the American.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say we'll set that up differently. Which 5 teams are going to be in the front running as conference champion representatives of the Group of 5, starting with the American Conference?
So, part of me wants to say Tulane. I think they won it in 2022, and they were really close last season. But although they've got a good kind of backbone there, they've lost important players, and they've lost their coach Willie Fritz. So to me, it's got to be the Memphis Tigers, and that's partly down to their quarterback Seth Hennigan, who's super reliable. He's played it feels like forever. So that feels like a team that is set up to win that conference and have a really strong shot at making the playoff.
I guess we've already started, so technically this is not prefacing this segment, but all remember that this is late June. This is these are very early predictions, and many of the things may change.
Pin Ben to the opinion if he gets this wrong.
Of course, and that's why we're getting people like Ben to do them so early, so we actually stand a chance of
getting anywhere near their predictions.
Yeah. So going on to Conference USA.
That one to me feels tougher in a way, because my instinct is it's got to be Liberty. I just don't know how much. I don't know how much I trust them. They had such a great record last season, went unbeaten, and teams like that tend to take a step back. But I look at the other teams that are in contention, so probably Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State, I guess. All it takes is for one of those to beat Liberty, and Liberty's season could be done. But I'm going to go with Liberty. That's the long-winded way of saying Liberty, but I don't feel great about it.
That's absolutely fine. And next on to the Mid-American Conference, the MAC.
Yeah, I have to say with the Mac as well, one of the great things in the old days of ESPN Player was all those midweek games from the Maction, midweek Maction. So many of those games were so entertaining. A lot of teams that there's no glamour there, but you'd get some great games like Northern Illinois against Bowling Green, and it would just be wild shootouts. Probably, right, this is either Miami of Ohio or Toledo. And I'm gonna say Miami.
Ooh, not the Rockets.
Okay.
No, I could have tossed a coin, but I'm gonna go with Miami.
Just
I'm
before
going
you go
to
on,
ask
Fletch, I'm going to have to, unfortunately, mediate my way out of here. Cause, as I say,
No problem.
Ben, really appreciate you jumping on. Fletch is going to keep you in good hands. I've got to shoot and hit the London commute for my sins. So
Okay.
really
Right,
appreciate you jumping on.
Now, Ben, now he's leaving. I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Joe on Friday. That was Toledo had a very, very good off-season with Quinion Mitchell going so early in the draft, which was such an amazing thing for a MAC school to have a prospect like him come out and go so early in the draft and be such a highly rated prospect. From what you're seeing at the moment within the scope of college football, how much are Toledo, I guess, starting to see some of those benefits of having such a prospect? Because you would think that if you're a young player coming out of high school, or even a transfer portal prospect, the fact that Toledo have been able to grow a player to that position must make them an exciting place to go to.
Yeah, I think the transfer portal is the key bit to this, because if you get yourself in a position at Toledo where you look like you could be a top draft prospect, do you then go into the portal and go to a bigger school where not only are you going to get more exposure, but depending on how big that team is, the off the field earnings will be greater. Mm-hmm. You know, if you went to a Michigan, for example, which, you know, is practically just down the road really from Toledo. Mm-hmm. It's not a million miles away. You could go, and if you were a big deal in Ann Arbor, there's so much more money there for NIL deals and all that sort of thing. Do you think, okay, well, I've got big at Toledo, but I can get much more money at Michigan and still get drafted? That's the danger. However, you will see players, let's do it the other way. There's a talented player who was, say, a 4-star recruit at Michigan. He's perhaps not lived up to his potential, or there are a couple of players ahead of him in the rotation where it's like he can't get past them because they are elite. Does he then look at Toledo and think, okay, well, that's certainly not giving up? You know, they put a player there day one in the NFL draft. This is somewhere where you will get noticed and you can get yourself drafted at a high level. Yeah. So I can do that. But it is a double-edged sword, because the better that those schools do, the more you risk. A bit like when we talked about like European football. Yeah. If you're a team in the championship and you're pushing for promotion and you have a striker who seems unstoppable and that January transfer window is coming up, can you actually keep him? Yeah.
And it's, again, I think with that as well, it's the teams that get relegated and often just get purged for whatever talent that they do have, because players have got a taste of the Premier League and Premier League wages. And, yeah, you know, the Championship does not offer such wages. No. Moving on to the Mountain West, is there any team particularly standing out there to you?
Yeah, Boise State. I mean, it feels like the lazy option, but always Boise State. Really like what Fresno and UNLV have been doing, but I just think Boise State are the clear leaders there. That's one I feel really quite confident about.
Yeah, that's one I think unanimously many people feel very similar. And I think so far you and Joe have had very similar answers, if not the same answers, really? For the first 4 conferences, sorry. And finally moving on to the Sun Belt Conference.
This is the toughest one. This is easily the toughest one to call, I see a few teams that I would put on a very, very similar level. And that's App State, Louisiana, South Alabama, Texas State.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, it would be a guess right now out of those.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to pick Texas State. They've just come on in leaps and bounds over the last few years, and it feels like this is their time now.
Yeah. Lovely. So,
and in part because that Jordan McLeod. Keep an eye out for Jordan McLeod, the new quarterback they've got in.
Okay. So out of those five out of those five, and I know there's a couple that you say a guesses or based on very little information at the end of June, this is the best, I guess, prediction you can make at the moment. Are there any that you are particularly looking at and saying out of those five, or maybe including the couple of ones that may actually win the conference that you're not quite sure on who would win it, who you feel best about going in and representing the group of five in the playoffs?
I want to say Boise State, but the problem with it is that they've got some really tough out of conference games.
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine a situation where they win their conference really easily, unbeaten, but they could lose against Oregon, Oregon State, Washington State, and that knocks them down the rankings. In which case, you then have a situation where perhaps Liberty, with an easier schedule, even though I'm not totally sold on Liberty, if they do beat Jacksonville State and Western Kentucky, they're probably going unbeaten and they're probably getting in the playoff.
Yeah. One thing as well that I hear a lot about Boise State is they like to punch above the weight as a college and like to play those bigger games, which is a risk that you take, I guess, in those situations as well when going up against, bigger Power 4 schools Power 4 schools now. But that should be moving on to the Power 5 conferences in the ACC.
Power 4. That's it. We can't even get used to it now.
Yeah. And so we've got the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and the SEC. We will start with the Big 12 there, and a conference champion.
This one, I feel, is all about Utah. They've been so strong in the Pac-12 in recent years that they kind of got screwed when 4 teams buggered off to the Big 10. Utah are not as big a brand as them. They found a home there in the Big 12. It feels like a good fit for them, and I think they're going to win it straight out of the gate. It's such a strong roster.
Mm-hmm.
They've recruited so well, and I think they're going to fly through that.
So you're not paying attention to all the people who say that Colorado are just going to walk everything this year.
No, I certainly don't buy into that.
No, okay, that's fine. We'll move on to the ACC because, as we mentioned, the growing disparity between the top 2 and the other 2 in the Power 4. The ACC, are you looking past Florida State, or can you not look past Florida State?
I think Clemson have improved. They've recruited well, but the fact that Clemson is so against using the transfer portal really counts against them when Florida State have used it so well. Now, the thing is, we don't know how well they've used it really until those players actually start going. And we don't even know how much we'll learn against Georgia Tech in Dublin. But if those players click, that is their division, that is their conference, to lose. And I don't see them losing it. I don't see them being as strong as last season, but I don't see Clemson catching them. Interesting to see if Miami can. Everyone seems to feel that they've got a stronger roster this year, but I still think they're third in that conference after FSU and Clemson.
Well, one of the things I was going to say was I feel personally, me this year, that Miami have had a very good foray into the transfer portal this season and have definitely gotten stronger. And, you know, with Florida State losing so many players in the draft, I think only Michigan had more players taken in this year's draft than Florida State. It's a lot of players to lose. I know you've already mentioned, that there's been a lot of turnover. But I do feel that Miami have done quite well this offseason. I'm one in that camp.
They have, and I'm interested to see Cam Ward, who they've brought in at quarterback. They've just been missing a good quarterback, really, for so long. If Cam Ward can live up to his potential, then they are definitely in contention. And that Florida State-Miami game late in the season could be absolutely crucial, kind of must-see TV.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are listening to this episode but didn't listen to the last one, I have a soft spot for UNC. So I do hope the UNC do well this year, but if not, that's fine. Moving on to the most important conference in all of college football, and we do have to cover this, even despite recent developments, but the Pac-12, who wins the Pac-12?
Oh my God. Toss a coin. Let's say Oregon State.
Oof. That's a bold prediction.
Yeah, 50-50 on that one.
Move on to the Big Ten. I know you've already mentioned Ohio State quite a lot. Do you think it's Ohio State's to lose this time round then?
Yeah, I think it's Ohio State's to lose, but I don't. This is perhaps the most interesting conference, because I see 4 potential winners as well as Ohio State. I think Oregon are going to be right behind them. Michigan, although they've lost a lot and haven't restocked as well as they will have liked. I mean, it's difficult because the players they're replacing feel irreplaceable. They're not going to be an easy out. I think they'll lose to Ohio State. That might be their only defeat. And Penn State as well are in the mix. I think there's a drop-off after those 4. Ohio State, because of the players they've brought in, I think that gives them the edge over Oregon.
That's absolutely fair. And every time someone mentions that to me, and I noticed you did it before, you kind of looked a bit like, oof. No, I'm very aware of this. I have been aware of this for a while. I just hope that the one game that we don't lose is that last one of the season.
Yeah.
But I think if I was to make predictions right now, I'm very much with you that it's Ohio State's conference to lose going into this season. And finally, well, let's face it, is the biggest of them all, the SEC. How do you see the SEC going, especially now with Kalen DeBoer taking over at Alabama? Do we see a little drop off from Alabama this year?
I can't believe I'm going to say this sentence, and I don't know when I would have last said this sentence. I really can't see Alabama winning the SEC this season. I think they are well behind the top 2, and that is going to feel weird. And I don't think they're going to have a bad season, but I just don't think they are conference championship material. I could be proved wrong, and if Saban was there, I just wouldn't say it. But I feel they've lost a lot of players. They've lost players in the portal. They'll be fine, and they will be in championship contention sooner rather than later, but I don't think it'll be this season. I think it's a step back for them. I think it's all about Georgia. I'm intrigued to see how Texas, I think Texas were not as good as everything suggested last season. They got into the playoff. They deserved it, I guess. But they were not as good as other teams in the playoff. And I don't think they're as good as Georgia. I think Ole Miss are really, really interesting. Ole Miss can cause those teams a lot of trouble. I think Ole Miss are better than the likes of Bama and LSU. And it feels weird to be saying that, but I think Ole Miss are going to have a really good season. Yeah. But I think the best 2 teams are Georgia and Texas. I can't see past Georgia.
No, and that's entirely fair. Moving on to the second to last segment. I feel like this is the actual last segment, and then we have an extra little bit for you at the end. And I think it's a great segue to talk about Georgia and the talent that they've got. are there any players that you think are worth watching out for this season? We don't have to be talking potential Heisman winners, but couple more players that than you mentioned so far. Here are people we expect Roger Goodell to be mentioning on Thursday night in Green Bay in April.
Shedeur Sanders from Colorado, the quarterback there. If I had to put money down right now, I would say he would be the first pick overall, not because he's the best player, but because it's a really bad year for quarterbacks in terms of drafting. You do not want to be on the lookout for a quarterback in the 2025 draft. But Shedeur Sanders has a lot of tools. He's exciting to watch. He's got a decent arm, but not amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But he's really confident, and he feels like he's kind of ready for the NFL mentally, which I think is partly being there at Colorado with Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. So if you get the chance to watch some Colorado games, do check him out, because I think he's going to be drafted very high. Same Drew Aller, quarterback at Penn State. Make sure you watch this guy, because he's someone who you can expect to be drafted that first night. Also, in fact, while I'm talking about Colorado, their best player is Travis Hunter, who's a cornerback who was meant to go to Florida State. Then he said he was going to go to Jackson State. Jackson State are tiny. So it's hard to overstate what a shock that was. Committed to a really big school and then committing to a much smaller school. And people thought, how long is he going to stay there? And it wasn't very long. And Deion Sanders got him out of there. But make sure you watch him. Michael Williams, you say about Georgia. If you're watching some Georgia games, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of Georgia games on Sky now that the SEC are with ESPN. Really good edge rusher, probably the best edge rusher in college football in this upcoming season. Again, it can be difficult to say. And yeah, while you're there watching Georgia, watch Carson Beck, because he's probably going to be overdrafted as well, and really overdrafted. And let's say a Michigan player as well, Mason Graham, an interior defensive lineman. So I've kind of, when I watch him, I think I'm expecting more.
Yeah.
And I think this is the time that he's actually going to kind of take that step up, and he's going to show, look, this is a pro guy, and he's going to be playing on Sundays.
Love it. So if we will hopefully try and do something across a little bit about social media around maybe a couple of players, or at least post them out there as well, so you can continue to follow them. I want to do something around this, just so that this isn't just a few things that you've said that gets lost in the wayside in a few weeks, the more episodes get released. But these are absolutely players, and I was going to say, if you didn't say it, I was going to say, what about Carson Beck? Because one of the things that I noticed was a couple of weeks ago, Shedeur Sanders was the betting favourite to go number one overall. And I did say on last week's episode that the only people who win out of that situation are the bookies, because, but I checked this afternoon, and Carson Beck is now betting favourite, at least on Bet365, to go number one overall, although it's quite close in terms of the odds. But Ben, before we wrap up, because I'm aware of how long we've actually kept you on this afternoon.
It hasn't felt like it, I'll be honest.
No, not at all.
It's been just great fun.
Behind you is a very lovely wallpaper, but what's popping out to me is not the wallpaper. It's that book there. Can you tell me a little bit about that book? Does it say American Football Revolution there behind you?
Yeah, my wife is thrilled at how famous this wallpaper that she chose has become, because it's ended up on like the BBC and everything. This is the American Football Revolution, how Britain fell in love with the NFL, which I wrote. A labour of love. I had to write it because I was afraid someone else would write it.
Yeah.
And I was worried that and I'm sure lots of these listeners that you have will recognize this sentiment. there are a lot of people who've come into the NFL space who want to talk about American football, who do we know if their heart's in the right place? Are they in it for the long haul? The quote-unquote influencers who I feel that if all of a sudden the NFL was the least cool thing in the world and NHL ice hockey was the hot thing, that all of a sudden all these people would just pivot and be like, I'm NHL now. This is what I do. Because it was never about the NFL. It was about them. Yeah. My worry was that someone like that would want to write a book about this, how Britain fell in love with the NFL. And I thought it would bother me so much if someone else did it or the wrong sort of person did it. And I don't know if people are going to listen and be like, oh, the wrong sort of person. But you know what I mean, right? You know the sort of people I'm talking about. These sort of people who you see on Twitter and Instagram who annoy the hell out of you. Well, I was scared one of them was going to do this and make a hash of it. Mm-hmm. And then it's done and no one else can do it. So the way I wanted to do this was when people talk about the NFL in the UK, far too often they don't actually talk about the fans and they don't let the fans speak. And that bothers me immensely. They want the celebrities to speak. They want the big media personalities to speak. They don't want to hear what the fans have to say. Yeah. So I thought, okay, how do I get the fans' voices into the book? And I thought, right, how about each chapter is a particular era of the NFL's development in the UK, and we tell that era through the perspective of one person who lots of people in each chapter will be able to relate to. So any American football fan who reads this book will see themselves in at least one chapter and be like, oh, that's me. That's my way in. That's how I got into things. That's how I feel. And you'll probably find yourself in multiple chapters. That's the feedback I've had. So it takes you through like 4 decades of the sport in this country. And it was a privilege to be able to write it. I wasn't sure if anyone was going to want to publish it. I first went to Pitch Publishing because they're an independent sports publisher and they had published an American football book previously. So I thought, let me start with them because I know they're really passionate. And at worst, I'll get good feedback on my pitch, no pun intended, and like what I can do better when I pitch to the next publisher as I go down the list. So I emailed them and they said, right, can you fill out this like formal document with your pitch and like how many words it'll be and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And I sent that like, I don't know, kind of early afternoon. And then that evening, I just got a contract. They're like, yeah, let's do it. And I thought, wow, that was quick. They were very, very committed. And I thought, I've got to make sure that people like this because if I mess this up, maybe other people in the UK aren't going to get the chance to get a book written about the sport. There were 2 things that I felt pressure on. I don't want to mess it up for people in the future who want to write a book about American football. And I also want to represent the fans in the right way. Because if proper fans read the book and be like, do you know what? I don't feel this represents us, then I failed. Thankfully, people say the opposite. They say it did represent them. And I hope that the relative success of the book in how it's been received will allow other people in the UK to write American football books that they're really passionate about because there's a market there. We've shown this. Lots of people might feel like, oh, no one's gonna buy my American football book. You don't know. Give it a go. And if you have read the book, please consider leaving a review on Amazon. It is the number one thing that you could do to support the book if you've read it, because it does so much for visibility, specifically Amazon reviews, a star rating and a review. And, obviously just an honest review. I'm not saying it's all about 5 stars. It's just having an honest review and having a star rating. It makes such a difference. So the more that the more that people out there can do, hopefully the more books there will be from our perspective. Yeah. And it's nice to get, and it's why I love doing these podcasts, because I love being able to be part of that UK perspective, because it's people didn't have an outlet before, and it's there in the book, the importance of people like, do you know what, I'm going to do this myself, and I'm going to put a podcast out, and it's going to be from our perspective, it's going to be our thing, because there's a million podcasts in America that people can be listening to, but being able to hear people who sound like you, have the same experiences of, okay, well, to watch this game, I've got to stay up and do this, or I really want to watch this game, but do you know what? It's not shown over here, and I'm having to follow it other ways. Not everyone's got that experience, but we do, and that's why it's a community, and that's why those of us who are actually a part of the community and are doing things for the community can enjoy being in that community, because we're not using it as a means to an end, and we know that some people are using the community as a means to an end. So I don't like that. Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit protective of the UK fan community, because I think it's special, and I don't want anyone to take advantage, and none of you should let people take advantage. If people, even if it's me and you don't like what I'm saying, you don't like the book, then just say something, because it's all of us. There we go.
I think while everybody's at home or even in the car or wherever they're listening to this now is standing up and applauding you for that, I think that is a beautiful place to end this episode. I don't think we could get much better than that. To be very, very honest. I think the obvious thing to say at this moment in time is, by now, if you are still listening to this episode, the links are in the description. You know they are, of not only how to follow Ben, I will ask you in a sec as well how to find you on, but all the links to find and follow Ben on the interwebs will be in the description, and where to buy the book as well. And on that note, as I'm just going to say, where can we find you, Ben, if we would like to go and follow you?
Mostly on Twitter, at Tweets from Ben. I'm not going to call it X. I don't think I'm ever going to call it X. And the fact that my handle is Tweets from Ben, I can't have it as X posts from Ben. That's going to suck. Yeah. So Tweets from Ben, and hopefully I'm an entertaining follow. I like to have conversations. I'm not just out there kind of just putting a statement out and then ignoring the replies. I'm on there because I like to talk about these things rather than just promote myself. So yeah, please come along, join my conversation.
Absolutely. I think, by the way, just on that note as well, I don't know a single person who in general conversation has called it X. I was actually listening to Locked On College Football on my way home today, and one of the things that Spencer McLaughlin was talking about, because I'm a few episodes behind at the moment, was same thing, don't know a single person who actually says X when talking to in public about Twitter. So
yeah, anyone who does needs their hard drive searched.
And that's where we'll end it. That's the point we want to finish on. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining me and Gary today, while Gary was all suited and booted just for you. We really, really, really appreciate it. It is. I don't want to kind of throw a lot at you at this moment in time, but it is somewhat of an honour, because I've somewhat followed you and Nat and a lot of people who have been inspirations to a lot of us kind of getting into the community over the last 10 or so years. So it's been greatly appreciated to finally, as I said off air, I know your voice. To interact with the voice is another different thing. Thank you so much.
Can I come back? You're gonna let me on again now?
Oh no, not at all. But
that's it. One and done.
Of course you can. Welcome back any time. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, let's make it happen again.
Lovely.